You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
With cocoa in hand, welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd in Portland, Maine. Joining me, as always, we have Her Holiness, the Reverend Tracy. How you doing?
I'm lovely because I have cocoa. I wanted a dessert, and so I remembered I have all the things to make cocoa, and I made it myself because you know you can do that. You don't have to have the package of pre-made cocoa mix. I have all of the tools, and I made happiness happen in a cup. As we sit here, and in the background of our discussion today, I watch on my phone, and actually I really should just put on my laptop now that's right in front of me, the live Georgia runoffs. That's going to be probably concluded by the time we're done recording today. So yes, just kind of interesting, that one.
So if you either hear some whooping and hollering or some cursing, you're going to know how that result went down. But speaking of Georgia, that kind of ties into why we didn't have a new episode last week.
Yes, we actually, the Mr. Reverend and I went to Georgia for the Thanksgiving holiday. I got to meet my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law and his partner and my cousin, or my nephews, sorry, not my cousins. So yeah, like that was really awesome. It was a good time, but it was just like by the time we got back, it was just hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. Like I don't take time off. Like that's what I've learned about myself, is I am horrible at actually taking time off, especially because right now my office job is part-time. So when you leave halfway through a week, it's easy just to stack all your hours up front, and you know, vice versa coming back, I put them all at the end of the week, and I had no energy. So Tim and I took a stern look at each other, and I went, can we not?
And yeah, with the past couple of weeks, with everything that's been happening to me physically at work, it was nice to just take a week, take a breather, and let you folks re-listen to one of our more popular episodes. And I think with re-releasing it from the archives in our conversation with Elias Watts, mm-hmm. It has made it our most listened to episode overall, combining both. So
yeah, and then something I like to, we know the Reverend Tracy is having the baby Reverend, and there's a lot of interesting advice and tips and blanket advice and to-dos from doctors. I just want to throw it out there. I did find a new book this week, so anybody else out there that is either expecting or thinking about expecting, this is to me so far better than What to Expect When You're Expecting, which is considered the Bible for pregnancy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's what people kind of go to. But this one's called Expecting Better by Emily Oster. And the reason I want to give it a shout out is, not that we're being sponsored by it or anything, she doesn't even know me, but she is very practical. Like, I know I mentioned listening to How to Build a Better Brain or How to Build a Healthy Brain. Mm-hmm. And something that I really liked is she went into the whys and how your brain works and all this stuff. And Emily Oster is an economist. She actually teaches economic classes. And so, when she went in during her pregnancy and her doctor is just giving her this blanket, do this, don't do that. And then she's finding out her friends are getting different advice from different doctors. Mm-hmm. It made her curious. So very much like me, wanting to go in there and looking up the studies and finding the bullshit in them and the stuff that's not actually being taken out and the bias that's being laid over it. Super fascinating. So again, it's called Expecting Better. And that other last little tip I'll give that I actually told a friend today, because I know she's not expecting yet, but she wants to one day. I highly advise getting the books beforehand, because something I didn't realize is that they actually have chapters on before you become pregnant. So, really cool resource. I have been super back on Audible again lately, so I got the book with one of my credits that I had. So I like to share this brain food when I come across good stuff every now and then. So,
nice.
Anybody out there that, cares for that, there you go.
Well, we have a little visitor here, Beans, joining us once again for the recording. And it was nice spending time with Beans while you and Mr. Reverend were away, because at first she was like, why are you here? But once she realized that I was giving her food, at the end of the time before you got back, it got to the point to where I felt, in her own cat way, she looked at me and goes, you're all right.
Yes, you are Uncle Tim now.
Yeah, she ultimately ended up finding a spot on my guitar case and, sleeping there every now and then. But
she does like to get her hair on things like that.
Indeed. But, also physically, though, just work. Like, my last day at work a couple days ago, I walked 14 miles. Oof. And, every single day I'm doing, 10, on average, about 10 to 12 miles per day. So my feet are toe up, as they say.
Mm-hmm. That'll do it. As an avid hiker myself, I understand the foot pain. Yeah,
but to be clear, though, this is with the way they're feeling now. It was the same exact way that I felt when I got my Doc Martens. So after a couple of weeks, they're at the point now where I think within a week or two, the pain that I have will subside.
Well, we hope so.
I hope so too, because I do kind of like money.
You like money?
Yeah, money's nice, but I'm like the lawyer from Idiocracy right now. Go away, anyway.
You mean the biography or whatever, like the foretelling of where America's going? No, President Camacho actually cared about the well-being of his people, but. Yeah. Anyway, we're done with the stuff. That's right. That was last month. This month, we're actually going to go on to a lighter topic tonight. We get to talk kind of about the magic of Christmas.
Yes, that's another bad work experience there, because they switched over within a couple of days of me starting to just playing Christmas music, and then the music that they're playing there, it's essentially 4 songs, but different versions of those same 4 songs by different artists, and it is so awful. There's one song called Last Christmas that sounds like the Charles in Charge theme song, and I fucking hate it so much. Like
the Last Christmas I gave you my heart, and then took it away or whatever. Really, that's funny. I didn't think that sounded like Charles in Charge. What's funny is my favorite Christmas song is I Want a Hippopotamus, and it sounds like maybe they're not playing all the hits, it's probably that, All I Want for Christmas Is You, and Santa Baby.
I mean, the only... and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, just listening to the lyrics, how horrible that is, teaching kids that the only way you're going to get accepted is if you have a use.
Right. I love the kind of stuff that comes out about, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's remember, kids, and what's funny is, even the point of, Rudolph was literally just as useful as the other reindeer, but, he was a freak. So just remember, don't stand out unless that thing that makes you stand out can be utilized in a very helpful way.
It can make you money, kids. But, there's a part of me that wishes that they would play, and they would never do it, of course, but play, some of the South Park Christmas songs, Mr. Hankey's Christmas classics.
It's Christmas Time in Hell.
It's Christmas time, yeah. But there's actually an album that they put out, too, and there's a song that Mr. Hankey sings with Kenny. It's you can suck all the dick you want and still be a virgin, Mary. But what we are going to talk about today is Santa Claus. Being the cynical type, there's a lot about Christmas that is too saccharine for me, but I still enjoy the holiday. I mean, I'm not like my aunt. I've talked about my aunt on the show before, who lives in a town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan called Christmas, Michigan, owns a store called Santa's Workshop with a 50-foot Santa right outside the door, and every year around this time, people from all over the world will send letters to Santa's Workshop to have it postmarked so they can get letters directly from Santa to give to their kids. So what the Reverend and I wanted to do this week is talk about the idea of Santa Claus and how it relates to kids.
Basically, should we be teaching our kids Santa Claus is this magical figure who comes into your house at night? And it was interesting because all of October I was with my mom and dad, So those are my adoptive parents, for those that have picked up that I refer to biological parents that I have, and my mom and dad. Those are, in fact, different human beings. Totally different set of people. 2 are actually involved in my life, and the other 2 is implied or not.
Oh!
So I was talking to my mom about it, and I was expressing that I was really happy, with the baby Reverend and his timing, that I wasn't going to have to worry about the Santa clash between him and any of his siblings will be older. Like, my little dude is turning 8 this month. Mm-hmm. So if he hasn't already caught on, he will probably in the next year or 2. So by the time the baby Reverend is babbling, he will probably have outgrown that belief. Because I know my oldest step kiddo, my Baco, it was really kind of funny because I was working for Portland Santa, and I took them both to go see, and the last thing Z said before going up to Santa's lap was expressing to your father of, what do you say to somebody that's larger than life? And then not even like a week after that, I think Z put it together that, okay, Santa wasn't real, which is honestly like the best case scenario there. Yeah. For the kid to put it together and not have that like crushed by somebody else. But yeah, I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, well, what do you mean you don't have to worry about that? I was like, well, I don't plan on teaching my son that Santa is this real mythical person. Like, I plan on teaching he's a cool mascot, he represents something nice, but I'm not going to teach that he's real. And it was just really funny just to see this look. Like, I had crushed her Christmas magic somehow. And I was like, it's okay, like, that'll be mine to deal with. Like, this is my choice. I'm not going to do it. So that was what really inspired me to want to bring this up to talk about on the podcast. Like, all right, let's read some pros and cons. Let's see if I'm the asshole here, because according to all of the Christmas movies, I'm evil. I'm that stern, like, oh, it's just a spirit of the holiday. And it's like funny because that's what's true. Mm-hmm. So in all of the Christmas specials we show kids, I am the problem. I'm the monster. I'm the bad guy. So, but in reality of it, and I know there's a lot of stuff, we might not get to talk about it, but Tim did find a really cool Psychology Today article that I will admittedly say that I didn't get the chance to read. But of course they cover stuff like this because Psychology Today does deal a lot with child psychology and how we should kind of consider raising our children on that mental health level. Is this good for them or not? What does it do? Is it harmless or is it potentially harmful? And
with the articles that we will be talking about today, we will have the links for them in our show description. And also, too, that's a feature I have not utilized enough on Spotify, but Spotify has the ability for us podcasters to pose a question for our audience. So if you are listening on the spot to our show on the Spotify app, you can go and see the question that we ask and answer it. And as always, any sort of communication we get from our loving fans, we will make you podcast famous and bring up that your answer on a future episode.
Yeah, and the question this week might be, is the Reverend the asshole for not wanting to teach your child about Santa Claus?
Well, let's go back in time. I mean, what was your experience with Santa as a kid?
I honestly, okay, so this is where we go into I have a trauma past and my memory is garbage. I don't remember how I learned that Santa wasn't, like, factually real. Mm-hmm. That he wasn't, watching everything I did and assessing whether or not I was good or bad. Like, I do know that I believed in him at one point. I do remember writing, like, letters to Santa. I think my bio mom actually did find one at one point and sent it to me, that she, like, took a picture and sent me this, and it was when I asked for, like, the high stepper horse, because anybody who is around my age knows what the fuck I'm talking about, because that toy was fucking hot back in the day. The high stepper Barbie horse, because I loved horses, and, being a vagina human, being raised in Texas, there were some pages of the toy catalog I was encouraged to look at, and others I wasn't. So it typically, for me, I liked Barbie because Barbie at least had the horses, and that was at least something that I was interested in with Barbie. I was never really into Barbie outfits, which was always just fucking stupid with my step monster. because she kind of really wanted to insist this very girly persona on me.
Right.
And so I remember through that side of the family, I would normally get like the high-end fashion Barbie bullshit. And I'm like, okay. I mean, half my Barbies were just like naked, chilling, and waiting to go ride a horse in the buff, I guess, because I just didn't think it was like, that important. It's like, what? She doesn't have any real parts to cover. Like, you know. So, I don't know. Like, I remember doing Santa stuff. I don't remember how I put it together. I want to say I figured it out. And it wasn't that somebody told me and crushed me, though. Because I think I would have remembered that a little bit strongly.
Yeah.
So, I think I naturally put together that Santa wasn't real.
Well, my mother was a pragmatist. She knew that with the amount of money she was making, she wasn't going to be able to like buy us all the wild and wacky toys that we saw on TV and were begging over. You know, we weren't going to get Nintendo. So she made it very clear from a very early age that Santa was just a fictional creature. You know, we knew that it was her. I mean, she would, you know, go through the effort of hiding the Christmas presents that she bought. And I remember a couple times my sister and I were able to find them. Generally, she would keep them in her closet hidden. But yeah, just I never really believed, even though you know, I would go through some of the activities as a kid. You know, like writing a letter to Santa because they make you do that shit. You know?
Well, what's funny is I guess one other part that's kind of relevant that I do recall now that I think about it is I totally led my parents to believe that I still believed in Santa for a while, because to me that was like how I got new things. Because normally I would get hand-me-downs from my older brother, like for the most part, like pretty much any TV, any technology, stuff like that, anything but clothes, like was hand-me-down. And my bio mom was really good at getting me animals from people, like usually for free. I remember one time I got a ferret, and it was literally because the person couldn't keep it anymore. And she knew I wanted a ferret, that I thought they were cool. So she's like, here you go. And so I got a lot of free animals, didn't get a lot of new stuff. So I did try to like use that and milk that as long as I could. To like, because I felt that was the only way I could get things that weren't hand-me-downs for my brother. So I was afraid if I was open about it, I would lose my new shit privilege.
Trauma response, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
You know?
I was maybe a neglected child. Anyway.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little.
Anyway, yeah, so what we are going to do here, we do have a pro-con that we will go back and forth on here and discuss some of the bullet points. So I say we dive right in. This week, I'm going to go with the pros.
Yeah, Tim gets to be the positive one this week. Now, we will preface, this is not from procon.org. This is from All Women's Talk. So this is a lighter topic today. It's not going to be based on any facts or numbers or anything. You know, I don't even know if they've done like a lot of quote-unquote studies on whether or not this is good or bad. So this is really more of just opinions being shared. I don't really suspect my opinion is going to be changed by the end of it, but I am down to have the conversation.
Yeah, the Psychology Today article does mention some basic studies that were done in terms of, you know, basically asking adult kids their feelings of learning that their parents lied to them about it. And yeah, so, I mean, there is that. So if you did want to read more about those studies, you can definitely check out that article again by going to our show description and tapping that link. But let's dive in. Pro number 1, it gives them magic. Ooh. The mystery behind an unseen figure bringing toys creates excitement for your kids. Going to bed with no presents under the tree and then waking up with piles of gifts stacking around the tree, believing a complete stranger left them, is magical. I can get behind that, but I think the idea of, you know, even if, like in my house, you know, with my mother, you know, being very upfront that, you know, there was no Santa, it was still cool going to bed and then, you know, waking up, you know, super early in the morning. And I remember my mother, there was a picture, and my sister may still have it, of my mother it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. She had just had a long shift at work, and it was Christmas Day, and she had her robe on, a Virginia Slim cigarette. And, you know, cool. She smoked Coles and just sitting on the couch, just fucking tired. but that was the fun of it. That was, a shared experience my sister and I had with her, and that magic I can get behind, because even with the baby Reverend, even though you're not going to tell him about Santa, you're still going to have that thing of Christmas Eve, goes to bed, no gifts under the tree. He wakes up the next day, all the gifts are there.
Oh yeah, like there's no reason to not do that. Like, because really, I would think doing that makes more sense anyway, because the temptation to peel back a little corner of wrapping paper is huge when you are a child.
Or shaking it,
I was totally guilty of that shit. Like, if there were presents left out and I figured out that I could do it and get away with it, I totally tried. And I, as far as I know, never got busted. Now, that could have also been a choice of my bio mom of just not going, I'm not taking away the gifts. You know what I mean? I spent money on this, and return policies were a little shaky back in the 90s.
Yeah. They're not that better now, but anyway. Let's dive into our first con then.
Yeah, let me go down to con number 1.
I didn't organize it properly, damn.
The disappointing news. Since Santa Claus is magical, to hear that he is fake can be very depressing. It is even more a disappointment when, as a kid, you catch your parents red-handed in creating the illusion. When I was 5, so again, this is an article that was written by somebody, my brother told me he saw our parents in the middle of the night putting down presents under the tree, including ones that said, "From Santa." That's when I realized that Santa wasn't real and Christmas became less magical. Hilariously, my mom kept putting "From Santa" on our gifts as we got older. She was just having fun with it, and we would pick on her about it too. And this is probably one of the reasons that I don't want to teach the baby Reverend that Santa is a real mythical person that goes into your house, right? Like, you can actually look up like YouTube videos and possibly even some TikToks nowadays of children not handling it well at all. Like, I've heard stories of someone, God, I wish I could remember where it was from, but I remember he was talking about his sister. And she basically lost it on their parents when she found out. And it wasn't like that the parents told her. I think it was somebody at school. So she came home, parents confirmed that the child at school was correct and there wasn't a Santa, because, I guess she was about that age. She locked herself in her room, refused to eat, and she wasn't so upset about that Santa wasn't real. What she kept screaming was, "You lied to me." You lied. And so really, to me, it's a matter of, I don't think it's harmful to not teach your child about Santa, but I do think you're risking some harm and really breaching that trust relationship that already has so much working against it when you consider watching programming. Programming TV, there's a lot of that adults versus kids in there already, and why you shouldn't trust the adults and stuff like that. So I think I just would much rather have a relationship with my child that is very much based on one of our family mottos with my stepkids is, you don't gotta lie to kick it. And I want to always be truthful to that, which was funny because even taking my stepkids to visit Portland Santa back when I worked there, I never said he was the Santa. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I knew that it was something they believed, and I wanted to respect it, and I figure if it ever comes up, I will be happy to talk about it with them. I knew this was something you believed. I did not feel it was my place to tell you that it wasn't real, but I did work for Portland Santa, and I thought it would be fun to go. But I never, really spun them up. It's it's the guy, you know what I mean? It's we're going to go to the mall and visit Santa.
Yeah, and as a parent myself, my kids are, mostly adults now, except for my youngest, still in school age, but he's a couple years away from, graduating himself. You're going to encounter difficult situations anyway as a parent, and also as a parent, there will be times to where, you may mess up and disappoint them anyway.
Yeah.
Why create a situation that disappoints them that early?
Exactly. And it's if you, and I think we're going to I'm going to wait on that one.
Okay.
Because I know there's going to be another pro or con that is more closely related to the thing I was just about to say. So I'm going to put a pin in that one and let you go to pro number 2.
All right, pro number 2, it's a lesson in positive reinforcement. The whole concept of who is naughty and who is nice is simply a form of positive reinforcement that your kids learn. If you behave and obey your parents, you will be rewarded for doing so. Disagree with this one, because when I hear this, I think of that South Park episode Red Sleigh Down, where Eric Cartman goes in, gets his naughty and nice accountant to figure out what he needs to do to get presents from Santa, and he found out that he had to, in order to make things right, he had to bring peace to the Middle East. That idea of works alone without the intent behind it of actually trying to be a good person, to me mean nothing, because there are a lot of people who have done a lot of great things who behind closed doors are horrible people. And I think in my opinion, I would disagree with this pro, because it does not teach this naughty and nice list doesn't teach kids anything positive. It teaches them to fake their way through being good, and then they will get rewarded. That is not a positive thing.
No, it's not a positive thing. And then the other spin, and I can say this since I've gleaned through the cons enough to know this isn't covered, which I was surprised it wasn't covered. When you can't give your child the thing they asked Santa for, it makes them think that they were bad. Like, I do recall some of those feelings as a young kid, because we were poor, but, Santa was magic. Santa was magical. Santa could make anything happen, and that's what I was being kind of taught and led to believe, because it was normal for the culture, right? So when I didn't get it, I was just convinced, like, what did I do wrong? And especially, like, being a kid that was very much high on the people-pleasing scale as a trauma response and fawning, I wasn't a bad kid. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't cheat on tests. Like, not that early. I totally did a little bit later in my high school career. But when I was a kid, I was hyper into the people-pleasing. Especially, like, when I, being away from my dad and my bio dad and stuff like that, like, early on when he was still, my daddy back in the day, because I was such a daddy's girl back when we were still, like, really close and connected. So, like, I wanted to be really, really good all the time. It actually caused a lot of anxiety as a child for me. So then to not only be dealing with what way wasn't diagnosed back then, which was generalized anxiety in children, which I highly suspect that I had, it made it so much worse. Because then it's like, well, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
What did I do wrong to not get this thing that I asked for? It was the one thing I wanted. I didn't make a long list, Santa. I wanted one thing. And so it can be, like, kind of crushing in that way. That
is one reason why I am very glad my mother was upfront about there not being a Santa. Yeah. Because, we were poor. Even if my dad had lived with us, we would not have had much money to get a Nintendo, to get, like a stereo, or, later in the 90s, a CD player or something like that, and that idea, the fact that there are kids today who, think that, hey, I've done good all year. Why am I not getting this stuff? I mean, that's kind of shitty.
Yeah. And then, the kid that's bullying you at school brags about their Santa gift. And that motherfucker's a piece of shit. So why did he get the thing that he wanted, or she get the thing that she wanted, but you got kind of left in the dust by Santa, right? And I know there's parents that say, like, don't give kids Santa gifts that are expensive things because of this lesson. But you can't stop the child from asking. And unfortunately, that is that thing that's being taught, is if you're good, you ask Santa for a thing, and if you are good, you will get that thing. Because he's watching. He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. You know what I mean?
He's not creepy at all.
Yeah, no, not creepy at all to be, like, watched by a stranger. Only if they ask you to get in their van.
You're naughty. Oh, yeah.
Naughty.
But that was a great segue to our second con there.
Yeah, so con number 2, ridicule from peers. Another problem is when your kid's classmates and friends learn the truth before your child does. When they find out your kid believes, they start making fun of him, I will put, or her, and saying that Santa Claus isn't real. This not only embarrasses your kids, but confuses them as well. Plus, this kind of experience only pressures your children to accepting what the majority of people are saying instead of thinking for themselves. Is conforming and following the masses something you want your child to do? Which is, that's, yeah. What's funny is that whole, like, following the masses thing kind of works on both of those levels, right? Mm-hmm. Because do you want them following the masses of the children who do believe? And then right to the whim of the children who don't believe, right? Yeah. And a sidestep from this one that's super related is there's enough bullying in our schools. Granted, the Mr. Reverend and I have already talked. The baby Reverend is not going to go to public school. It's probably going to be a remote situation, and we will choose the social activities to make sure they are socialized and have friends and things like that. Mm-hmm. Because, you can do scouts, you could do basketball teams through your local community center, stuff like that. Like, kids aren't the ostracized stereotype that gets perpetuated out there, like that homeschool kids are weird or something. Mm-hmm. You can still socialize your child outside of the parameters of public school, which I think has just kind of gotten really toxic. But if I were going to send my child to public school, I really wouldn't want to give more ammunition to, like, be able to have them be bullied by kids. You know what I mean?
And to me, though, like, this... I thought back to my school experience because a part of me was, initially when we were talking about this topic, I was thinking about, were there kids that I knew that really believed in Santa? And myself, I don't recall anybody that I knew that was really hardcore Santa is real. And, I think, they kind of talk about, I don't know if they talk about it here, but I think most kids generally around the kindergarten, first grade era are, learning the truth at that particular point. And so I would say maybe, depending on the social abilities of the kid in question, it's not necessarily going to be as big of a deal. Now, if you're awkward and shy and poor like I was, and you still believed, maybe that's a different story. Maybe you're going to get mocked. But, I don't know if it's necessarily that big of a thing, but I did find it funny. Like, like they say this about Santa, but, organized religion's great.
Yep, and that actually leads into our last pro.
Yes, pro number 3.
Sorry, this one's not my favorite pro.
Yes, it is a practice in the ideal of faith. Even though Santa Claus is not real, the belief in him is like an introduction to religion for your kids. Of course, how your kids view religion in the future depends on what you tell them when it comes time to reveal the truth of Santa Claus, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, it's funny because they're acting like you don't take kids to Sunday school. Like, kids already have a way to be introduced to religion. And to me, like, when I read that as a pro, it honestly kind of surprised me it was listed as a pro. Mm-hmm. Because in my eyes, teaching a child that Santa is real while also teaching that God and Jesus or whatever your religious faith of choice is real, I would see that shaking faith across the board. Mm-hmm. Once they realize, hey, well, my parents taught me Santa was real too, so is Jesus also real?
Because a lot of the religious stories happened so long ago that, just like Santa Claus, there is enough historical evidence to show that there may have been something that was there to create the story, mm-hmm. but it doesn't mean that the story you're being told is what is the truth. Right. The skeptic in me, folks.
So it was interesting to me to have that one in prose. So I would almost say, especially if you intend on, like, if you are a believer in a faith and you intend on teaching your children and, kind of setting them up where they are also part of that faith, I would be really hesitant to teach your child about Santa because I think that's going to create some confusion, mm-hmm. Especially, like, at the age that they would be putting together that Santa's not real. You know what I mean? I don't know. I kind of understand. I came from the South, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of that traditional stuff. And there was even kind of a section of Christianity that was anti-Santa. They didn't want to teach Santa, and that was actually part of why, was they didn't want to confuse their kiddos when it came time to learning Santa wasn't real. They didn't want to align that with Jesus, because especially now with how intermingled those have become, that this is now considered like Santa and like having a, oh my gosh, like even in Georgia, it was really funny because my mother-in-law has, and maybe we can share a picture of it. I'll share it on the Facebook page or something. It almost like took me back almost on just flashback level. She had this porcelain painting of Santa with his hat off over Jesus in the little crib, like praying. And my bio mom had the exact same one. I actually checked my memory banks with my brother, and he was like, yep, absolutely had that. And I was like, wasn't hers also like, because, you know, for anybody that knows ceramics out there, you can have just a ceramic piece. You can also have it mounted, like on a music box or something that rotates. And my bio mom's was mounted on one that like played Silent Night or something. And I remember, I still remembered that. So when I saw it at my mother-in-law's house, it totally like took me aback. I was like, holy shit. I never thought I'd see that again. So that being said, like now it's been so intermingled. I could see that being even more confusing for a child that's being raised, particularly in the Christian faith, for that to shake up even more than just their trust in their parents.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you really want them to believe in Jesus, I don't know if that's worth the risk.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much more you can really say on that part. It's like you can... parents are reading stories to their kids all the time. They read Peter Pan, and the kid can be a big fan of Peter Pan without being given the impression by the parent that Peter Pan is real. You can still share the magic with the kids about Christmas without, saying everything's real. It's going to happen for real. No, it's not.
Yeah. So we'll get into our last con, because I did just notice there's a paragraph after the con from the same article that I totally want to share before you go into those last little bullet points that you added at the bottom. So number 3, and I realized this was kind of covered in con number 1, or at least I did anyway. But number 3 is kids realizing you lied. Not only are kids depressed about learning about Santa Claus, but also from realizing that their own parents lied to them. Parents play an important role as a medium for kids into how the world works and what is the truth. You might lose your child's trust in you over something as minuscule as Santa. And so, like I said, that kind of wraps up to some of the stuff that I said with con number 1. Because I hadn't read down yet to see that this was the last one. I totally forgot. Honestly, I thought the religious one was one of the cons, because it's been a minute since I looked at this particular article. But yeah, like, I just don't think it's worth it to breach the trust with my child. Like, I think that's going to be my number one thing that I want to groom with my kid, is this relationship where it's like, hey, we don't have to lie to kick it. If you get scared and lie to me, just understand I'm going to do my best to be a safe space for you to come clean to, because everybody gets scared and lied sometimes. But what excuse do you really have to justify lying for years to a child about Santa Claus when you know it's not true? You know what I mean? So, yeah. Not to beat a dead horse, don't need to go back over it. That's just kind of where I lie on it. Lie. It's just not worth it to lie to your kids, I don't think.
It's not. And, there was an NPR article that did have some bullet points as well. One of the...
I was going to say, before we go into that, I want to finish with the cool thing that they put, because they did go into what Santa was based off of. So they wrapped it up like this in this article from the pros and cons. Deciding whether to teach your kids about Santa Claus is entirely up to you. And this, by the way, side note, I totally agree with this. I don't think you're a bad person for wanting to teach your kids about Santa. Just really take it with a grain of what it could cost, right? Anywho, they go on. If you're unsure what to do, there is one idea you can try. Instead of teaching about Santa Claus, teach them the true story of Santa Claus, which is the story of St. Nicholas. He was a Greek bishop in the area that is now present-day Turkey during the 4th century. He was known to give gifts in secret to those in need. One story involved him dropping bags of gold down a chimney. Sounds familiar? By teaching this story, you can still incorporate Santa Claus into Christmas for your kid, as they will have a new perspective on him, one with respect rather than blind praise. With all that said, good luck in dealing with the Santa topic. So I thought that was a great way that they had ended that article.
Indeed, because another great segue here, because the first bullet point on the NPR list is that you aren't lying. You're entering their world of make-believe. Kids, when they are very young, and I think you've brought it up on previous episodes before, they do believe stuff. Their world of make-believe is amazing in a lot of ways. And so if they do believe in Santa, you can work with that. You can still work with that.
Right. Kind of like when they bring up imaginary friends, right? Like, I've known parents that have set spots at the dinner table for imaginary friends of their kids. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't seem to have that soul-crushing repercussion because the kid knows where the imaginary friend came from. It came from them. So, possibly, I guess, if the baby reverend somehow picks up on Santa and decides on his own to believe in Santa, sure, maybe I can placate it a little bit, but I think I would much rather teach the real human that did cool stuff, because that's just more my bar anyway.
But, nice segue to bullet point number 2, when kids start asking questions, listen carefully. They might not be ready for the whole truth. Similar to the make-believe story. I mean, the parent that's going to tell a 5-year-old kid your make-believe friend isn't real is a dick.
Oh, yeah, because first of all, you don't really know that isn't real for them, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they've got such an imagination that they do kind of, in their own way, have created this person in their life, that person is very much real to that child. So I'd almost say it isn't exactly your place to tell them that it's not real. I mean, granted, I guess there's some lines that could be crossed that might make you want to consider therapy, but as long as it seems like mostly innocent pretend, imaginary friend stuff, I think you're fine. I think most parents would pick up at what point it's crossing a line.
And speaking of that, when the jig is up, you will know, come clean and be prepared for the big feelings. Mm-hmm. If you are going to perpetuate this myth that Santa is real, listen to your kids, and then once the truth does come out, just be open with them about it.
Yes.
And
I think that's honestly, that goes back to the you don't have to lie to kick it conversation, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to teach Santa, at least have the forethought to be prepared on how you're going to explain your justification for doing it.
Yes.
Right? Because having nothing or saying, I lied to you just for fun, granted, I don't think a parent would put it that way, but if they just said, if the child's like, why did you lie to me? It's like, well, it's fun. It's not fun to lie. You don't like being lied to. Don't accidentally teach your kid that it's fun to lie.
Especially when, you as a parent for most of their life are telling them, don't lie to me, don't lie to me, don't lie to me.
Right. Exactly.
And last but not least, find new ways to keep the magic alive. Just because you don't believe in Santa doesn't mean you can't enjoy the holiday. Doesn't mean because the professional wrestler Mick Foley loves Christmas, loves dressing up as Santa this time of year. And I guess he lives in New York, and I guess there's, I believe in New Hampshire, there is a Christmas theme park that's there, and he will go there every single year. So keep the magic alive. There is nothing wrong with, being lost in your head sometimes in a healthy way, you know.
And there's other ways to teach that magic. Kids are honestly very giving. They're not quite as selfish naturally, I think, as we give that stereotype too, that they just want and want and want, and the idea of somebody not existing anymore with the sole purpose of giving them something takes away the magic. You can kind of turn that around, and I don't know, you know what really needs help this time of year? Places like soup kitchens. You can go, and if you don't feel as comfortable interacting with the houseless community, you can do it in the background. There are food pantries that need people to go and just be in the back and help weigh beans and stuff like that. That's actually something that my mom does with my adoptive niece, is they go once a week. I learned that when I was there for October, was apparently they go and they, help at the food shelter.
Nice.
Or the food shelter, the food bank, for the homeless and poor. So there's other ways that you can teach how to be magical and awesome and giving during that time of year. Even if it's making silly little goodie bags to give to their friends. Like, I think something lovely that I do with my stepkids is we've gotten used to Makesmiths now. So they think it's really cool that I can crochet. And they know once a year I will ask them what their Makesmiths request is. And this year I am making a cat ear beanie for my Baco. And for my little dude, he wants a big mushroom like cushion like to sit on. So, you know, and it's happy for them. Like, they love it. We give them one big thing, which is normally like a tech upgrade or something. And then I make stuff for them. And I think that they really love that on a different level than buying them things.
And to me, doing stuff like that, it aligns more with the idea behind the holidays than lying to kids.
Right. And you can even, like, start planning, like, fun adventures. Like, the other thing they know we're going to go do is we're going to go skiing. Those kids, especially my little dude, loves skiing. One thing that he looks forward to when he does get to come up here to Maine for Christmas is doing a hut-to-hut ski with his dad, with the Mr. Reverend. Like, he has talked about this a few times ever since the Mr. Reverend brought it up as a concept. So, you know, you can do things to keep it magical. You can do a little mini family vacation. You can do, like, learning how to make stuff. Baking. Oh, my God. Bake stuff and send it to family. Like, that was another thing we've done with my stepkids is baking Lebkuchen, which is, you know, a German cookie. I'm pretty sure, Lebkuchen? Pretty sure that's right. Because I know in my household, in my bio household, my biological grandmother used to make Stollen. And in Germany, that is a labor of love because that shit takes like a few days. So, you know, there's other ways that you can have cool, magical, unique traditions to your family that's not necessarily following the masses and doing the Santa thing.
Yeah. I mean, like my thing pretty much every year around this time, I will make a point of watching It's a Wonderful Life at least once because, you know, in the 80s when it was still in the public domain and playing on television, you know, 437 times a day on every single channel, you know, I think back to the 80s and the times to where like my mother would come home from work and then we would put it on and watch that. So there are ways to where you can celebrate the holidays without lying to your kids, as we mentioned, you know, and just, is it worth lying? No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think for me personally, and I'll still preface with, I'm not going to judge other people who do decide to indulge in Santa.
I will.
Just,
No.
you know, you're supposed to be the positive one this time, Tim. Fail. You're getting a fucking chunk of coal for Christmas. But yeah, so, you know, if you decide to do that, just at least have an exit strategy plan and, you know, like the one article said, be prepared to have a difficult conversation because you're likely lining yourself up for one.
Indeed, indeed. So that will wrap it up for us this week. And I think, as we mentioned, our topics this month will be holiday related.
Yes, a little bit holiday related. We're trying to go there.
Indeed. And also, too, I think what I will do on Christmas Day this year is replay the radio version of It's a Wonderful Life with Arthur Q. Bryan, the voice of Elmer Fudd, as Clarence the Angel.
Yep, so we will try to find some more content that kind of makes sense for the holiday season and stick to a holiday type theme.
Indeed. So do we have any updates on the Senate race? I'm sure the folks at home are...
On the Senate race, I mean, by the time this comes out, you guys will know who won or lost. But I guess at this point, it's 39% reporting. Raphael Warnock is 55.4% of the vote, and he's currently leading by over 150,000. That's been holding pretty steady for, like, pretty much since we got on. So, dear Santa... Can we please have somebody win the Georgia Senate seat that actually has policy ideas, input, and plans?
Or is just simply competent? That's,
we'll go for that.
I don't think that's hard to ask for. Like, you know, I don't have to like a candidate or even vote for a candidate to still hope that they're competent to do their job.
Right. It's like in the spirit of Christmas Santa. But what's nice is this isn't quite as make or break as the last time they had a runoff when Warnock won because it actually made the determination in the Senate. Mm-hmm. At worst, he loses and it becomes a tied Senate, which the vice president would break that, so then it would only matter who wins the presidential election next year. And
if Warnock does win, the benefit would be that, you know, the Joe Manchins and Kristen Cinemas of the world are less effective at being dicks. So
Well, and it's one more person who's actually going to vote for reproductive rights for women, that's going to stay on the side of the LGBTQ community, which he's already spoken out for. You know, there's things there that, you know, personally, no secret, I would be voting for Warnock if I were in Georgia. I understand there are people within my own family who feel quite differently, but that is okay. That's up to them. It's funny because we talked about the mudslinging. Those two have an interesting campaign going that sure as hell seems to have nothing to do with the policies that they're going to be making decisions on. So, you know, and I know I made a post this past week just kind of pointing out, like, that maybe we shouldn't let the media manipulate us with the negative campaigning, and go and look at what the candidates actually are going to vote for. So, for me, it seemed like a clear one. I can't speak to why other people believe what they believe, but, you know, I will be waiting, and I hope that I can have an answer before bed, but otherwise I will just wake up and probably read that, you know, Warnock won. It seems to be going in that direction, and that's what a lot of people have kind of anticipated would happen anyway.
I just thought of, there was a Simpsons episode where they visited the Super Bowl, but they did a gag to where anytime they mentioned the teams, the characters would put their hands in front of their mouth and then say the team in question. The reason they did that is that when that episode went into syndication, they would change the name of the teams based on the year that episode is playing.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, anyway, we thank you all for listening. As we mentioned, we have in the Spotify app, if you're listening to us on Spotify, we will have a question related to this week's episode. If you are so inclined, we would love for you to answer that question. And like we said, we will read the answer on the air. We will also put it on our social media outlets, except for Twitter. We are no longer on Twitter.
Nope, we've both kind of gotten off of that one, even before the most recent reasons. Like, I think we decided to step off because A, we weren't using it anyway, and B, it was like before they even ruled that no, Elon, you really do have to buy it now.
Yeah,
like, we jumped off the bandwagon early. So
indeed, yeah. So we don't get to see Kanye West doing what Kanye West does so well.
Kanye.
Yeah, but anyway, we thank you all for listening each Saturday. We will have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
I want a hippopotamus for Christmas.
Okay, I hate Christmas music.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.